Yeah.
He just doesn't have a magnetic personality, that's all.
Right.
You ready, Kim?
Yes.
Let's call council meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions, deletions, changes to the proposed agenda for this evening. Manager Trent?
Mr. President, yes, we need to add one item under regular agenda, item number 5. I was advised by one of the engineers that we work with from Fleece and Vandenbrink that we're required to hold a public hearing for the Eagle projects that we've submitted our intent to apply for. So we need to hold a public hearing this month for the clean water projects, and then we will also hold a public hearing next month for the other project as well, and the wastewater projects. And the only requirement as far as a public notice is that we have to put it on our website 15 days ahead of the scheduled hearing date. And unfortunately, just due to a timing issue and availability, the engineers were tied up at our next meeting on the 18th. Otherwise, we could have put it on our website last night. And another gentleman is out of town that week. So, but we'll get into those details when we get into that agenda item. But basically, we need to establish a public hearing date sometime this month and find a date that's mutually acceptable to you folks where we can establish a quorum.
That's added to the agenda. Any other additions, deletions, changes to the proposed agenda for this evening? Roll call.
President Schneider,
Present.
President Pro Tem Dyke, Councilmember Kalka,
Present.
Councilmember Feldman,
Present.
Councilmember Glasser,
Present.
Councilmember Steffler. Present.
Moving on to the meeting minutes for our March 21 meeting. I have a few comments. One with regard to the first couple of entries, approval of the agenda paragraph and approval of the consent agenda paragraph. Both those, the way those two are worded, differ from the rest of the quotes as to voting. So all of the rest say passed unanimously. These two say passed unanimously by all council members in attendance. And I regret if there was any misunderstanding as to my intentions when I declare how the vote went. It's only intended, I only state by all council members in attendance if there are sitting council members who are absent. When all the council members are here, whether it's 4, 5, 6, 7, it's just passed unanimously. So as to those two paragraphs, it should just say passed unanimously.
Sir.
Okay. Then it appears that I may have joined village administration, much to my surprise. In item number 6 on page 5 and item number 7, both of those indicate that President Steve Schneider presented council with, and I don't think that was me. That would be coming from village administration. So I don't know who was introduced. I don't know whether it was Manager Trent or, but I don't think it was me.
Can't remember who.
And you weren't here.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, how are those minutes read, or who were? I would think whatever the memorandum was. Yeah,
Chief wasn't here.
Pardon?
The chief wasn't here to present it.
Yeah.
And they were for patrol car.
Yes. I'm Yeah, and Lisa did not do any presenting, so just thought we ought to correct that. And lastly, under council manager comment, second paragraph, first paragraph indicates that Manager Trent was addressing council with regard to the Stanlick issue. The second paragraph, I think that paragraph should begin with Manager Trent is informing Council Esther Senator Johnson, however you want to begin that paragraph, but it doesn't say who was presenting that to council. And that, in fact, was Manager Trent as to that paragraph. So that's all I had as to minutes. Anybody else with regard to minutes?
Just also on page 6, the third paragraph, it says they have till April 1st. I've just requested, says until. Also under council manager
Yeah,
comments.
third paragraph down, beginning with Councilmember Feldman. And in the second
Until.
line, they have until, and if we were going to do the shorthand version, it would be TIL, not double L, but
Okay.
let's use the whole word. Why not?
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else on minutes? General fund. Major streets, local streets. Downtown Development Authority Fund. Sewer Fund. Water Fund. Equipment Fund. Payroll Register Report. And that should be under that, right? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Steffler, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved. Regular agenda, public comment time for any item on our regular agenda for this evening. Is there any public comment for agenda items? Being none. Man. So regular agenda, ZBA council representative appointment. Our memorandum from our clerk indicates that Councilmember Feldman has volunteered to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals. We do need to fill that seat. And so I think we can all take a look at that and make our own conclusions as to whether Councilmember Feldman is capable of filling that seat. Is anybody else on council care to volunteer for Zoning Board of Appeals? No volunteers other than Councilmember Feldman. I think we need a motion.
Pete Feldman is the council representative to the ZBA.
Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Calco, to appoint Pete Feldman as to be the council representative on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved. Regular agenda item number 2, Fort County Community Foundation Summer Internship. Manager Trent?
Thank you, Mr. President. At our last meeting, council approved us partnering with Fork County Community Foundation to have a summer intern again this year. And after reviewing a number of resumes that were submitted by Kathy Dickens, the executive director, I had the pleasure of interviewing Cameron Joseph twice by phone. He's currently going to school at the University of Wisconsin in Platteville, which is in the southwest corner of that state. He hails from Romeo. He was on the football team there at Platteville and was offensive lineman of the year for their team. And it's a small conference school, but very competitive, he tells me. And he is majoring in environmental engineering. And with some of the classes that he described to me that he's had in his early educational career there at Platteville, that I think he's a perfect fit for what we're hoping to accomplish during the summer. Because of his football activities, he's got a limited window because of having to stay a little bit later and then go back to school earlier for football season in the fall. So we're going to take advantage of the window of time that he would have available to us, which looks like it's probably just a 6 to 7 week window. But he's very excited about what we have laid out as far as projects that he would be involved with. And he's already had a number of classes that relate to environmental engineering. He actually had a PACER class where they went and reviewed a section of roadway and went through the PACER analysis. So he's going to tag team with me going through our streets and doing our own analysis while we get queued up to tag team with the certified folks from the county that are allowed to do that. And he's also had an intro to infrastructure class. So he's had some exposure to stormwater management and water and sewer. And he's very proficient in AutoCAD. So he's got a lot of computer skills. So it seems like he would be a good fit from a technical standpoint for inputting data into our ShareNet program. He does have a slight injury that is going to require a little bit of surgery as soon as school is out, but we're going to be able to accommodate him and be able to put him eventually on a golf cart where he can just drive up to all of the necessary items that need to be GIS inputted. And he said he can handle that. So for the first couple of weeks, he'll probably be more limited to office work, but we've got projects that Kim has identified as well as myself that will keep him busy for a couple of weeks, and then we'll get him out there in the golf cart and out in the real world and inputting data and collecting stuff for us. So he's very excited. I think he's a good fit for us, and depending on how much progress we make and how much of opportunity we need next year to wrap some things up, he said, if you need me the following year, I'd be more than happy to come back the next year as well. So.
Sounds promising. Discussion, council? If not, somebody care to bring a motion? Sounds like a good candidate.
I'll make the motion that we hire Cameron Joseph as our summer intern.
Motion by Councilmember Steffler, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to retain for the Fort County Community Foundation summer internship that of Cameron Joseph. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved. Regular agenda item number 3, purchase of laptops. Kim?
So I had to take a straw poll because when I spoke with Micro Center, they had very limited quantities of both the HP and the Lenovo computers, and they could not hold them for me until this meeting. So I sent out an email to each individual council member, asked their choice. 4 members did choose the Lenovo. So I went down there Thursday afternoon to pick them up. Unbeknownst to me, and the salesman apparently that I was talking to, he needed prior approval of allowing me to purchase these 7 computers without manager approval. In order to do that, they either said I had to pay the full price, which was $250 more per computer, or buy the 1-year limited warranty at $119.99. So I went with the inexpensive version. So I did purchase 7 Lenovo laptops with 1-year accidental protection, and I distributed what that covers. So I would need a motion to ratify the straw poll for the purchase of the Lenovo laptops in the amount of $5,739.86. $5,739.86. Mr. Love.
I'll make the motion that we ratify the straw poll purchase of Lenovo computers in the amount of $4,899.93.
Or the
Five,
other.
the new number,
What's the new number?
573986.
573986.
Jackie? Motion by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Kalka, to approve, to ratify essentially the straw poll and the purchase by our clerk treasurer as stated on the record. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously ratified and approved. Regular agenda item number 4, revised purchase order for liquid ferric chloride.
Yes, Council, at our last meeting, you folks approved a quote that had been provided to us by the Haviland organization for $2.37 a gallon for 4,000 gallons of the liquid ferric chloride. When Supervisor Farley contacted the firm to place the order after you folks had approved it, the sales representative said, oops, in converting, I don't know if it's the dry weight or the liquid weight or whatever it is, but instead of just giving us a per gallon price, they had miscalculated the conversion ratio and ended up saying, well, it's actually about $1 more per gallon. And it didn't make any sense to do business with them from that standpoint. And so we're coming back to you to ask for you to approve that 10-cent higher rate from PVS, which is the firm that we used last year, which ended up honoring an older quote, even in light of the fact that chemical prices were going through the roof at that time. They still honored a very good price for us compared to the competition. And so going forward, instead of going through this roller coaster of trying to identify vendors that can give us the best price for this, I think we've identified who that vendor is. They're based in Detroit. All of the other companies that are based in Michigan are shipping from other locations outside of Michigan, so you're going to have a higher freight cost anyway. And so tied in with the request to approve a higher price of $98.80, which is $400 more than what you approved 2 weeks ago, is to also approve PVS as the preferred vendor for this product. This is the only product that we happen to acquire from them at this point in time. But I think it just makes sense for us going forward year by year. Just go to the local source in Detroit and know we're going to get the right price.
Seems we have a little roller coaster of our own where we require different prices, not require them.
So do we,
But every time we go to quote and use somebody new, we take a ding.
It seems like it.
I know we buy 4,000 gallons every year because that's what we use, but is our storage capacity greater than 4,000 gallons?
Just slightly over 4,000.
Okay. Just wondering if they give you a better price if you have a continual contract versus a once annual purchase.
Certainly pursue that with the sales representative from PVS. Appreciate the suggestion.
That way they know that, for a sales guy's point of view, right, he can book that out 1-2 years and say, yeah, these people are going to come back to me every year. I might be able to average the price out, maybe not.
One question before we make them the preferred, though. So we make them the preferred, and 2 years from now, they're charging us triple the cost. when, should we put like some kind of review spec on this just to, I mean, I think it's smart we go with them, but, and sometimes going out to quote can be cantankerous like it was last on this, but also sometimes when we honor a consistent manufacturer, we make the danger of getting price gouged at some point in the future. So what kind of protection can we put on there?
Might be good to see what they have to say about the year-to-year pricing.
That, and I'm sure you can add language. I mean, we normally do in the industry that says if, so I'll use the example we have, it's called index pricing for copper. So if copper prices change over a certain amount, let's say 10% in a given time period, then the contract is back open to go see if somebody else has a better price. But at the same time, so it's good for both. If copper prices drop more than a certain amount, then the contract is also open for the other person to come back, the other party to come back and say, hey, copper's going down. You need to bring your price back down a little bit to us too, because we gave you more when it went up and it's out of your control. You can charge us a little less if it comes back down.
Sure.
So, maybe that's also something to talk to the sales guy about is, if it's 4-6% year over year inflation, then our expected increase should be right around that, not 15%. And if it is, then the contract's open for us to go find potentially better price.
Sure. I like that idea, and certainly, and this is the type of product that, even though I'm recommending that we have a preferred relationship with PVS, that because of the cost factor, we would come back to council for your approval, and so we can tie bar that in with any contractual arrangement we have as far as the index pricing and year-to-year commitments that they would provide to us. So thanks for the comments. I really appreciate that.
Said Mindy about being flexible. Sometimes it's really helpful. Okay, so do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to rescind the purchase order with Haviland and reissue a purchase order to PBS at $2.47 a gallon for a total price of $9,880. This is also approved PBS as the preferred vendor for the ferric chloride product.
Support. Motion by Councilmember Feldman, supported by Councilmember Glasser, to approve the revised purchase order for a liquid ferric chloride. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimously approved. Moving on to the added regular agenda item, where public hearing needs to be set, I think specifically for the Clean Water Project, and will require a special council meeting. Our managers already made some presentation. However, if you'd like to add anything else,
Yes, thank you.
please.
I hate to create an additional date of a meeting for you folks, but if we can schedule a brief public hearing, it's probably less than a half hour. It could be as few as 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how many people show up. But just in my own mind, reviewing the calendar for later in the month, I'm targeting that maybe the end of the month is our best opportunity to establish a quorum. And there are two other meetings that are held at the end of the month. One is a DDA meeting on Wednesday, the 26th, I believe. And then there's a Parks Board meeting the following day on the 27th. And I know that we will have at least one, if not two, representatives already in attendance at those functions. So I was thinking if there was a way for us to piggyback one of those, that maybe that's our best opportunity to get a quorum. And I've already chatted with DDA Director Edwards about, interfering, if you will, with the start of her DDA meeting. I know she has a committee meeting before the start of the regular meeting, but if we could publicize on our website that we're going to have a public hearing at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, and I'm just throwing that out as an option for you folks to consider, then we might have a couple people. I know Mr. Glasser usually tries to attend the committee meetings, and obviously President Schneider is present for those DDA meetings as well. So if we can get a commitment that at least 2 of you could also attend, we just need to make sure that we have a quorum established for holding the public hearing. And the engineer will show up and make the presentation for the project.
I most likely will be there on the 26th for the committee meeting and the DDA meeting, so.
It's the Wednesday.
Yes, that's the Wednesday.
26th.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your flexibility. Piggybacking Mr. Schneider's comment about being flexible.
At
So,
7 PM.
yeah, we'll do it for 7 PM. Angela, if that works with you. I've already chatted with Kim about what, if anything, you need to do as far as noting the time change at the start of your meeting. You don't have to do anything. It's only if you started sooner that you would have to post a meeting notice. But if we can take the floor for 15 to 30 minutes, that would be great. And then we'll actually have folks here in attendance to hear what's going on with this project as well, and maybe get some feedback as part of the public hearing process. So, and then the engineers have already committed that they're available on our second meeting in May. So we'll be able to coordinate a public hearing on the same night.
So that's 26 at 7, correct?
Yes.
Just make sure, okay.
So if we could have a motion to that effect to,
Yes. Somebody bring a motion?
I'll make the motion to have a public hearing for Eagle projects on 4/26 at 7 PM prior to the regular DDA meeting.
Motion by Councilmember Feldman, supported by Councilmember Kalka, for setting a special council meeting with a public hearing for Clean Water Project on April 26th at 7 PM. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Unanimously approved. Now is the time on our agenda for public comment for any non-agenda items. Any public comment? No. Okay. So, open discussion. This should be interesting. The reserve funding policy. So, Kim, would you like to pick up the football and run with it? Is that-
Well,
I'm-
as discussed at the March 7th meeting, I brought up 2 different types of reserve policies. One was going with the auditor's recommendations with 1-year tax revenue plus 10% or plus a percentage of the following year's expected expenses. Or another one is to have a certain percentage of the following year's expected expenses plus a certain emergency reserve. So I have 2 different spreadsheets to correlate with those if you want to play with the percentages, the emergency reserve amount. But in your packet, the first one on page 26, that is the percentage plus the emergency reserve. And I put in 25% plus a $500,000 reserve. And on page 27 has that tax year revenue included with a 10% expected expenses.
Can I ask the proposal, excuse me, the 25% of following year's expected expenses plus 500 emergency reserve. that emanated from what? The first one emanated from the auditor,
Yes.
and the second one
From different samples that I pulled from other municipalities.
do you have a recommendation to council between those two?
Well, this is a debate between me and Manager Trent.
Okay. Anybody have?
Friendly debate.
It's a friendly debate.
Are there some boxing gloves in the storeroom?
He likes the the expense plus the emergency reserve, and I like the tax revenue. I'm
The auditors.
the auditor's.
The auditor's
recommendation,
recommendation.
yeah.
Okay.
It's just a little bit more conservative.
The auditors
Yes.
is a little more conservative. Okay. All right. Well, so I guess let's hear merits on both sides.
I mean,
Over mine.
if you look at fiscal year 2029, they're very similar. So it, it's like $30,000 difference. That's really the only difference. So it just, you get more in the front end with the emergency reserve and the percentage rather than the tax revenue.
Not being any sort of what was attractive to untrained eye was, as to the first one, what was available for the capital project fund.
Correct.
Much more viable. We're sitting there, which that's, I think, pretty important right now, but that's just my reaction.
Right, and
reading of
and also in the policy itself, if there ever is, for example, an emergency, we have that ability to pull out of that capital project fund. So if something catastrophic, God forbid, happens, we have that as a buffer as well.
Pull from the emergency fund or from the capital improvement fund?
Well, if the capital and the expenses don't cover the catastrophic event, then we can pull from that capital project fund. You can put it in the policy where it says, okay, if we fall below, what do we cut first? Do you want to cut expenses? Do you want to, you can prioritize what you want to reduce in order to get rid of that negative. So it's just an extra cushion. That would be the last option to pull from that capital project fund. But it's there as a safety net, I guess, an additional safety net.
How does the emergency reserve fund fit in though? Because you were saying pull from the capital fund,
Right,
but
so-
we're supposed to pull money out of the capital improvement fund.
To do capital projects, but if
yeah.
something catastrophic happens, say it's $1 million emergency water main breaker or something like that, we'd pull the 500,000 reserve, but we would still need an additional $500,000, and council would have to prioritize where we're going to pull those funds from. Are we going to pull from capital projects? Are we going to delay certain capital projects to the next fiscal year, that type of thing. So council would have to prioritize where they want us to try to pull those funds from.
Your plan that you want, there is no emergency reserve, right?
Not in the first 2 years, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, no, not at all. I'm sorry.
not
Yeah,
at all, right?
not at all.
So how does that work?
Well, then the capital projects would be postponed, expenses would be cut. That's how it would pull.
So, but what's that, the money that's sitting there, what does that do?
Well, that's just what council feels comfortable having as a fund balance. So if you want the fund balance to be lower, then we can pull that as well.
Hopefully earning 20%, so.
Well, that was my other question is like, is the money just sitting there or is it invested somewhere where?
Yeah, it would be invested in the CDARS accounts at either Choice One or at Tri-County Bank.
That differs from an emergency reserve that does not get invested
All
or that does?
actually, it would get invested.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently, right now, with the banking situation that's going on, I have automatic sweeps from our checking account into the CDARS. So we are FDIC insured at all times. So it sweeps back and forth daily. So it's easily accessible, but we still have a higher interest because we have more in the investment account.
Now, if I could add my 2 cents in this
Yes,
friendly
please.
debate that Kim and I are having. I'm an advocate for having the flexibility to utilize as much of our surplus that we gain year by year. And one of the projects that we'll be sharing with you at our next meeting when we get more into equipment fund and sewer and water projects is that, I've shared with you over the past month that I'm optimistic that we can actually fund a DPW storage building at our current site on Spring Street. We just in the last 2 weeks have received a new quote from a local vendor who is moving his business model into building and constructing storage type buildings and has come in with a quote that is basically a complete installation that has heat and electrical and all that good stuff, which based on our initial assessment of what we could accomplish, it might have been a phased in process, where we just get the building up and we can move equipment in there for storage. This quote gives us the whole package right out of the chute. And obviously it costs a little bit more, a couple $100,000 more. But if we were to utilize the approach that's outlined in the more liberal financial policy, that we would have the resources to give us the funds that we need to actually buy a complete package deal from this local vendor. And so that's where we're not asking you folks to make a decision tonight. You can obviously give us some direction on what you'd like to consider, or if you'd like Kim and I to play with some various numbers still, we're happy to do that. But we wanted to at least broach this topic with you again as a follow-up and let you know that based on where we're at today, where we ended last year with a 1.2 million unrestricted surplus in our general fund, that looking down the pike over the next several years, even with utilizing some of these surpluses for designated capital improvement funds, such as a DPW storage building or a 20% match on a state-funded project that we need to commit some funds for, those are the kinds of monies that could be used to help us fund those activities and still come 2029 have a couple $1 million or close to it still in general fund. So I think from a financial standpoint, the village is in wonderful shape at this point. It's a matter of how much conservative approach you want to take to managing the assets that you folks are entrusted with. So,
if we were to adopt the policy recommended by the auditor, I presume from what you're saying that it's less likely we would be able to do a project such as storage for DPW.
we could still do that with your permission. It's just a matter that, we would be taking it out of general fund monies versus dedicating some surplus monies based on a policy that says, we have a surplus for the year. We're going to add that to, our general fund reserve. And then we're going to take a portion of that and identify it as capital improvement based on what Kim has helped outline here. When you look at 2023 with a what would be available for a capital project fund, and then look at 2024 where there's nothing, basically $20,000. But that's because we've been able to utilize all of the surplus monies over the next couple of years to fund the DPW building. And then going forward, there's, a couple $100,000 that's being stashed away every year toward projects that you folks give us direction to work on year by year.
And also, let me clarify too, if you sum up all of those funds available for capital projects with the emergency reserve, by the end of 2029, if we didn't do any capital projects, we would have almost $3 million, where the tax revenue would be 1.9 million. So there is quite a difference.
Of course, there's been commentary from our auditor when they've appeared before us on an annual basis that we should be spending.
That's
What-
why
what do we have
I
just
also
sitting there?
recall, so that's why I was confused by, well, why do we have this recommendation that basically says save more? But when they're here, they say you should be spending down.
Well, because of the smaller community, it wasn't the village of Almont's, that's just the auditor's recommendation on a community of this size. That you should always have that tax revenue, 1 year's tax revenue, in case, something happens.
That makes sense, but we know I like that flexibility thing, so.
And again, if this is a policy I would like to adopt every year along with, when we do our budget. So if something changes, something drastically changes, that reserve fund balance policy can be changed.
That would be considered at the same time we do our annual budget, which sounds smart. Sounds like the right thing to do. Should always be looking at it, especially as I tend to keep emphasizing, we live in a rapidly changing world.
Right.
And so I think conditions and circumstances always have to be taken into consideration. What's going on in the ground right now. So.
And it looks like the estimation here over the years is that our expenses will remain mostly flat. So that would be assuming that inflation is mostly flat, which it might be really bad for a couple of years and then be way down for a couple of years, depending.
I think when we're trying to determine what the appropriate reserve amount is, it'd be interesting to see the data that I've seen presented in our audit reports about like how much that fund declined, particularly when we had the rough years, like in like 08, I remember seeing like a graph that showed like it got down like to this much, like we were still fine, but this was as low as it got. I think that would be helpful information for us to see, to try and balance like risk versus, I don't think from a taxpayer point of view, we want to hold on to people's money, they want to see it spent. And if they see as well, they've got all this money, why do I pay so much in taxes? Yeah, I think there's that balance that we have to keep in mind there too.
Yeah, I can certainly do the graph.
Really bad roads and our sidewalks aren't very nice, but you got a big
Yeah.
balance in the bank. Why?
Right.
I was just going to comment going along with that is when they can obviously see there are improvements to be made, whether it's DPW or sidewalks, roads, whatever. Always. So, and I think we want the ability to address those issues. That's part of what we're here for. Whatever improvements we can make, we make our citizens' lives a little bit better.
But I do agree that we need to have the catastrophic
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Murphy's still out there.
Right.
Yeah, might be riding high right now, actually. Yeah, so Catherine, did you want to make any comments at this point? I know you usually let everybody else go blah, 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 and then you chime in. Anything that you wanted to say before we try to conclude this topic?
I'm still mulling it. I know we're still in the discussion phase. I usually lean conservative on the financial end of it, but, we need to have some flexibility, and if we've got 1.8 million sitting in the bank and we've got a piece of $90,000 piece of equipment rusting and can't do capital improvements for 2 years, that doesn't make a lot of sense either.
Right.
Yeah. Which makes me lean more towards the one that allows for capital improvements to continue. I think I've seen those graphs would help a little bit too, because for those that weren't here in 05, 06, 07, 08, there was a couple of budgets where we didn't raise the millage and we had a $4,000 clearance on expenditures to expenses for the entire year. We were that tight, so.
I'd like to see those numbers.
Sure, absolutely.
There was a couple of budgets that were I mean, we had we had investments in the bank, but the actual budget, we were down to what, $4,000 to $8,000 leeway.
It was scary, yeah. And
I mean, there was a year we told, well, it ended up being a blessing. There was a year we told Russ no dump truck because it was like a $90,000 truck. Brian came back, and that was 2009, I believe. 2012, Brian came back with his truck that he built custom. Said if we would have bought that truck, it'd be a brick in the garage because the truck we were going to buy wouldn't have met their needs. So we had a couple of years where, just from a historical perspective, we had a couple of years where we had to make those kind of decisions, and it was tight. So having this kind of flexibility, it scares me a little bit. And if we're in a position where we can get a building put in place for half the price we thought it was going to be, and be able to store our equipment, and still have a plan for emergency reserve, that giving up on capital improvements when we finally got some capital improvements going is kind of scary to give up on. But then again, I'd like to see the numbers because I don't want the balance to be too low either.
well, at the moment, it seems like we're riding high from a financial standpoint, but
Right,
you can never take things for
But some
granted.
of the parameters in the economic world right now are pointing back to 2008. You have banks that are struggling, and it hasn't been in the media a lot. You have the house market's turning around into the other direction again, where it went up here, it is starting to flatten out a bit. And when those two things start happening, you can see up since '98. That's when we have to look at tightening our belt. So yeah, we do have to look at it very carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, there are negative signs out there, so no question. Not everything is rosy. And yeah, so I agree wholeheartedly. It looks like the banking crisis is going to be okay, but
But I would
you never know.
But I'd like to have a little bit more data before.
Yeah, sure.
Before, I usually have a gut, I don't have a gut right now. I think that should take it.
So I think it's the consensus of council that we're seriously taking into consideration presentation from our treasurer and our manager